farming focus in Warframe. It can honestly seem like kind of a slog, considering how many million points of focus you'll need to collect in order to complete a tree. However, it doesn't always have to be a complete slog. Doing an Adaro farm with Equinox, putting enemies to sleep, and taking advantage of a stealth multi can honestly grant a huge amount of affinity in a short amount of time. But it's nice to have some different options other than just one type of farm to keep it from ever getting too stale. So for a different method, I'm using Khora, utilizing her Whip Claw ability and the fact that Warframes getting kills from their ability will funnel 100% of the experience gained to the Warframe, making it a great way to farm using a single lens. In order to pull off this method of farming focus with Khora, we're going to need a few things. The Accumulating Whip Claw mod, and a solid stat stick or melee weapon modded to give Khora's Whip Claw ability a high amount of damage. If you don't have a solid crit multi damage Riven for a melee weapon, I'd suggest Paracesis or Kuva's Shield Egg as weapons, as if you've invested some Forma in them, you can basically get away with putting any mod you want on them given their 90 capacity maximum, as opposed to the usual melee weapon's 70 capacity. You'll be looking for crit multi, crit, damage, elemental damage, status, and if you really want to, some combo duration. Things like attack speed, range, condition overload, healing return, and enemy-specific mods will not work on Whip Claw. This can be really useful if you are incorporating Riven though, as something like a -2 Grineer will generally net you better other stats on your Riven, while not actually affecting your Whip Claw damage versus the Grineer. For a focus tree, I'd suggest using Zenuric for energy sustain or Neramon to keep your combo multiplier high. This build in general should net you a ton of damage and huge red crits, allowing you to one-shot basically any enemy. And now that we can tackle any generic enemy in the game, we're going to want to start maximizing our experience gains through a few different things. The first one's going to be enemy level, as a higher level enemy will grant more base affinity, so our obvious choice here will be to choose a mission in the Steel Path. Specifically, I'd say a Dark Sector Endless mission. Dark Sector missions will award us some percentage increased affinity, as well as some increased resource drops. If we pick an endless mission type, such as Survival, it's really great because the longer we stay in, the more Eximus units will begin to spawn, and they award a very high amount of experience, as well as having a chance to drop Steel Essence and Riven Slivers in the Steel Path. They begin to spawn at 5 minutes into your survival mission, capping out at 20% of the total spawns 1 hour into the mission. So if you do stay in the mission past the 1 hour mark, the rate at which you'll gain affinity or focus will be capped out, along with the rate at which you'll earn Riven Slivers and Steel Essence. However, you might not have to stay in the mission for the full hour. You might be able to collect all your focus sooner than that. If you take care to collect all of your convergence orbs, those yellow orbs that spawn in the mission, you'll be getting 8 times focus while the buff is active, which is really huge. Bringing in a Smita Kavat can also be a really good idea. It has a chance of granting you a buff that gives you double affinity and double resources picked up. Double affinity means you'll get twice as much focus, so you'll be able to finish that much sooner, and double resources actually has an effect on Riven Slivers picked up as well as Steel Essence picked up. Admittedly, it's a conditional buff and it might not happen, but you'll be really happy when it does. Lastly, if you've done the sortie and got lucky, got a good login bonus for the day, or just had some platinum to spend, an affinity booster is always going to be very handy. Gaining twice the affinity should make the run take about half the time, and if it's combined with any other affinity multipliers, it stacks multiplicatively, making it exponentially more effective. So overall, this won't be the most effective way to collect focus, but it'll be a nice break from the typical Adaro runs, at least I know it was for me, and getting the Steel Essence and Riven Slivers has been a really nice addition. In fact, with all the Riven Slivers I was collecting, And all of the steel essence allowing me to buy Kuva, I was actually fortunate enough to get a really solid Riven that I was able to use for a good stat stick for Khora. So this build, in turn farmed out an item to make the build even better.